Right then, boys and girls, how we doing? Welcome back to another video. This is this week's Wowhead Economy Weekly Wrap-Up. This is episode 196. First thing we do each and every time is give a big shout out to Samadan. He takes the time and the effort to collate this information for us, and it goes up on the Wowhead blog on a Sunday evening. Make sure to check out Samadan on either his YouTube channel or he does stream as well over on Twitch. Let's take a look at the contents for the week then. There is, where do we start with gold making? There's some Warlords of Draenor unobtainable transmog. There's Quinn's material storage idea. This was a good one. I like this one. There was some easy material flipping info and then some further reading for those that want to dive a little bit deeper. So, where do we start then? Well, where do we start with gold making? Oftentimes we forget what it's like to start out with gold making. Ezekiel Chris on the Reddit points out just how daunting that can be. This was a thread that went up on the Reddit at some point last week, stating that I've already read the starting guides and already got an initial plan on to farm up some materials, but now that I've checked my auction house and realised that I have no idea how the economy of my server works, not to mention that there are lots of materials already available on the server, it makes me kind of think that the material farming isn't going to bring in that much profit. Do you folks have any suggestions or strategies for somebody who's completely new to gold making and is confused where to start? Yeah, getting going is often the hardest thing with gold making because, like most things in life, this is true for not just gold making, this is true for many things, that actually the best thing to do is to just start. Like, forget about quality, forget about quantity, forget about, optimization. You can forget about all of that. Just get going. Just start doing whatever it is that you want to do, and you'll naturally learn how to get better at it and perfect it over time. So, this is the hard part. There are so many options and things to try in the game. It can be incredibly overwhelming. Thankfully, the gold making community is often at hand to point out to fledgling gold makers where the right decision is. The first thing he's posted is my response to this. Okay, I do spend a little bit of time over on the subreddit. I do keep my eyes open over there, seeing if there's any places where I can maybe offer 2 cents. And I think I probably said something similar to what I just did back then. The easiest way to make gold is by looking at an area of the game you know well and focus there. I remember this now. For example, if you raid mainly, maybe take a look at raid consumables. How many are you buying each week? The chances are that other people are doing the same. What materials do those consumables need, and what is the price of them? Maybe farming some of those materials might be a good start. You can spend time learning other markets once you get going, but start with what you already know. Yeah, this pretty much mimics just what I said a second ago. That just getting going is often the biggest stumbling block. Go out there, farm some stuff, pick up a profession, start leveling it, and you'll start to put the pieces of the jigsaw together. It doesn't take too long for you to get to grips with how things work. If you get too stuck in the mud with worrying about, optimization and, this YouTube guide says I make 50,000 gold an hour, but I'm only making 10,000 gold an hour. What's going wrong? Just remember that you still made 10,000 gold in that hour. You did more than what you would have done if you didn't do it at all. So starting at the beginning, just getting going is not a bad way to look at it. The reasons somebody might want to make a bit of gold in the game are many, and they're also varied, and there is no one solution that fits all. The initial plan to start farming mats is often a common one and a solid way to build up some capital. Bunny chimes in with just start gathering and start learning. Every material that you farm and are unable to sell is a lesson, just like the ones you manage to sell for a good price. It's a process of finding out what your server wants, and it is a process. You can always check the volume on the Undermine journal to figure out what markets have a lot of movement. The key is often to diversify your stock, so even if you don't sell farmed materials in a week, you just have to add different stuff to your sell list. If you want a strategy, I'd tell you to farm 200 bars or items of every ore in the game and then post them daily. You'll see what sells fast and what takes you more time to sell, and if you can figure out if it's then worth your time. From there, you can check what crafts with the ore that you sold are used for. Yeah, basically you can check, you know, can you then turn this ore into something even more valuable? That's another alternative way of shifting some of the stuff that you've picked up. This just basically reiterates the fact again of that just run around, pick up a few things, put them on the auction house, and you'll start to learn from there. 9 times out of 10 you learn by doing much more effectively than you do by, you know, reading a guide or watching a video or something along those lines. Just getting out there and doing some of it, you'll pick it up as you go along. This is great advice, starting small. Try a few things out and learn from there. It's always been my approach this way, and every experience adds to the learning. The other things I always mention is do what you enjoy. This is echoed by Beesvin. Yeah, do what you enjoy. If you don't enjoy what you're doing, you won't do it. Making gold is a long-term thing, and I see that you've watched or read some of the starting guides, so try some of the things out. If it's fun for you, continue doing it, and in the long term, you'll make gold. For instance, I hate farming materials, but I tried doing it for a while and realized I hated doing it. So I moved on to other things and finally found what I enjoyed doing. You'll make a lot more gold in the long run if you look forward to logging on. Yeah, I'm exactly the same. People that watch my content, especially if you catch me live when we're streaming over on Twitch, twitch.tv/Manthieus, by the way, you'll often see the fact that I spend as little time as humanly possible farming, because quite simply, I don't enjoy it. Running around collecting stuff, for me, I just don't get it. I see it as a means to an end, right? I want to make as much gold as I can, as quickly as I can with farming, so that I can take that gold and instead of spending it on a new shiny piece of gear or a new mount or converting it to a WoW token, I want to take that gold that I make from farming and invest it into something that I can then use to make more gold, whether that be improving my professions, picking up some recipes that I'm missing, starting ranking my legendaries, whatever the case may be. I like to take the gold that I already have and use that so that I don't have to farm. Even if it's as simple as taking the gold I already own to buy materials to craft a simple item. That I would much, much rather do than go out there and spend hours upon hours farming. But that's because I don't enjoy farming. If you enjoy farming, then you can probably make a very sizable amount of gold in not too long of a time just by farming. Gather stuff, put it on the auction house. When it sells, there's your gold. And if you enjoy doing it, keep doing it. Those who are very wealthy from transmog, for example, spend most of their gameplay farming transmog items, mainly because they enjoy the process of doing it. It should be noted that you don't even need Trade School Master at this point in the game. TSM is a whole learning curve in itself. Amen to that. There are plenty of guides out there for that already. Once you are ready to dive in, TSM can help you with pretty much every aspect of goal making. The key bonus is to getting more information on market prices to help you with learning and decision making. Yeah. It's often suggested that you go out and learn Trade School Master very early on. Now, while it's sensible to at least get the basics in place, you really don't need to be a TSM wizard to make gold with World of Warcraft. Sure, it helps, but it's not essential. You can, for sure, get very far without using Trade School Master at all. Especially if you're just in the sort of the farming side of things. You can gather materials and you can post them on the auction house with very little effort and with absolutely no need for Trade School Master. Sure, installing Trade School Master is helpful because even if you don't use the add-on, things like the tooltips are super valuable as they give you things like market prices and historical prices to help you decide what these things are worth. So even if you don't use like the groups and the operations and all of the fancy stuff that TSM can do, even a basic install of the add-on, get the desktop application installed, it will tell you what the value of stuff is on your realm, that alone is super, super helpful. Wunderbeer456 has some great advice into splitting your goal making into stages. This is something I want to touch on a little bit more so, because I'm not saying there's a right and there's a wrong way to do it, but there's definitely a path that you can go down. So early game, your double gatherer, your herbalist, your miner, that sort of thing, with a combination of a little bit of fishing maybe on the side, doing your mission table and getting your daily quests out the way for gold. If you are starved of gold now, get herbalism and mining and go farm the most recent materials of the patch. Go on YouTube and search for X item farm and filter by the last month. This is quite important, filtering by the last month, at least if you expect the YouTube video to be even remotely close to what you'll actually end up doing in game. We tend to find that a lot of the YouTube farming guides, by their very nature, they're competing against all of the other YouTube farming guides, tends to mean that the numbers that they sort of promote in the videos are often relatively inflated, or they're not so much inflated, they were just relevant at a time where everything was worth more. Materials through an expansion tend to go down in value. They might spike up again periodically for a while, but they start very high in value and they end up being almost worthless. That's just how materials work in the game generally. So a video that was made 3 months ago on farming is probably not going to be super helpful if you're just looking to know, well, how much gold can you make? What you should take from those videos is more the method, where you should be farming, what are the items that maybe you should be farming, roughly how many of those materials can you get. That's the information that you should try and extract from those guides, more so than the X amount of gold per hour titles that they tend to come attached with. Mid-game though, any current patch strategies. So basically providing for the average end-game player. This is going to be things like consumables with alchemy, your potions, your flasks, enchants for your gear, gems for your jewel crafting, and cooking to make your food and feasts. You could also be a provider of augment runes and Korthite crystals if you want. These are more specific to this exact moment in time right now, but generally speaking, being the consumable market in general, right? So anything that people are going to go to the auction house and buy quite frequently, you can get into those markets once you've made a little bit of gold from farming initially. There are also things like Mythic Raid BOE farming and 2x4 groups. This is, once again, more seasonal and more... I consider this still technically farming. Instead of, running around trying to pick up herbs and ore, you're instead often just trying to kill as many mobs as humanly possible in as short time as possible to farm up as much loot from killing the mobs in the first place. And then you have some late game stuff. So once you've conquered your professions and you've made plenty of gold there, then maybe you can turn into things like selling services, flipping of items, engaging in auction house PvP, and stabilized markets. I love how people have attached themselves to this term auction house PvP. I started using this when we were doing legendaries at the beginning of Shadowlands. I hadn't really heard anybody use it before, but it sounds like people have latched onto this term, auction house PvP. I think that's quite funny. Services in today's terms is basically joining a boosting community and carrying people through raids and Mythic Plus in exchange for in-game gold. Some people have done very creative things such as creating leveling kits, pet achievement kits, and other types of services. You're welcome to try these too. I've not focused too much from the gold making side of things on the boosting communities. Although it is very true to say that if you're what you would consider an expert in one field of the game, whether it be PvP or Mythic Plus or raiding, or not necessarily even an expert, if you just happen to be geared to the absolute teeth, then there is the chance that you're going to be able to push people through that content relatively quickly without them needing the gear or having to have met the the requirements to do it naturally. And people are always willing to pay for a advantage if they can do. It's an area that, I mean, you could either make no gold or you could make millions of gold. The sky's the limit with boosting people through stuff. It's a little bit more complicated than just picking up a profession, as it requires a little bit more setup. I suppose you need to, like he says here, you need to join one of the boosting communities. That's your best way to get into it. Those communities will then probably have the infrastructure in place. You just basically say, right, this is what I can do, and somebody else will go out there and find somebody that wants that thing that you can do. They obviously take a cut from it, but I'm quite sure that if you were to do it on a somewhat regular basis, it's probably quite a good way of making some gold. But, it still has its requirements. You still need lots of gear. You still need lots of knowledge or expertise in a certain area of the game. Flipping is one of these things that you can also do late game. Interestingly, I'm of the belief that you can actually do flipping very, very early on. Flipping could be an early game thing in my books. The video I posted just a day or so ago talking about exactly that. Feel free to have a look at it. But the normal process of buy low, sell normal, or buy normal, sell high, or buy low, sell high if you're being extra greedy. Basically the fundamental of buying something with the mindset of just selling it again to somebody else that sees it worth more. Often requires an immense amount of knowledge and immense amounts of capital whilst also being highly risky. True, at the top end for sure, but you can start small. You can start small with low-level materials, for example. Not going to cost you a lot of gold at all. Very little risk. Good place to start. Auction house PvP is an improved style of selling your things. Regardless what you're trying to sell, a market PvPer will probably have a big stock and keep posting things over and over again, and more or less aiming to achieve a monopoly on the market via undercut wars. Yeah, this basically summarizes what we consider auction house PvP to be nowadays. The cancel scan meta is the meta for things like crafted base item legendaries. If you are not actively engaging in, some auction house PvP, if you're not constantly keeping your auctions at the front of the queue, so when that buyer does come to pick one up, that yours is the first in the queue, it gives you a much greater chance of making the sales. But it sort of feels like farming nowadays. You have to dedicate an hour or two, or maybe longer in some cases. You have to dedicate a chunk of time to just sit at the auction house and focus on what you're doing. Cancel as fast as you can, relist as fast as you can, and the sales will hopefully steadily come in. And then you spend the rest of your time actually crafting those items to begin with. But it's a good way to make a lot of gold if you get good at it. Established markets are things with long grinds and constant demand through the years. They point to a point they persist through multiple expansions in a row and are profitable. Some things like panther mounts for jewel crafting, vial of the sands for alchemy, glyphs for inscription. These are what I call evergreen markets. Something that is going to be valuable regardless of the time of the year, right? It could be like a mount. Somebody will want a mount today. In 6 months' time, there's just as good of a chance of that somebody will want that mount again. So you basically play the game of just keeping those things crafted or farmed and basically listed on the auction house. As long as you have it listed, there's a good chance that it will eventually sell. So this is quite a good one, and they tend to be the big ticket items, right? So you're investing a lot of gold into those items to begin with, and you might be happy to wait 6 months before they sell. Transmog technically fits into this category, although transmog is more of a numbers game. You just need to have lots of transmog to see big results from it. But it's true. There's that pattern, right? You start off with the easy stuff, the stuff that has almost no risk to it. You then step into a stage where you are taking the gold you've already made and allowing that gold to help you make more. And then finally, you get to a point where you have enough gold already and you're just trying to make more of it. And you can be competitive with things like auction house PvP if you wish. All in all, there's some great advice for any aspiring gold maker, and the proof is in the community here, is that it's very welcoming whatever level you are at. This is true. Places like the Discords, for example, not just necessarily mine, but lots of content creators out there now have their own Discords, often tailored towards gold making. There is, of course, the WoW Economy subreddit. Tends to be more basic stuff going on over there. A good forum-based place for people to ask simple questions and get those simple answers. So there's plenty of resources out there if you're up and running and you want to get going. I imagine most of you that are watching this, though, are a little bit more seasoned. So I'm hoping that at least some of these mid-game to late-game tactics are probably what you've got your eyes on. Anyway, next topic. We have Warlords of Draenor unobtainable transmog. Last year, it was mentioned that some of the Warlords of Draenor armor variations were getting removed. They were removed due to the level squish. They made it so that there was only one variation of each. Some of them were being removed from the game. And in turn, because of that, there were people out there that crafted a bunch of these at the different ranks. Because often the different ranks had different appearances. Now, with anything that gets removed out of the game, people see opportunities there. What has ended up happening is that these ranks and appearances that have been removed from the game have got pretty valuable, which I'm sure we'll see in a minute. Well, now time has passed and there's no sign of them getting re-implemented. It was asked, how do we go about pricing them? So for those people actually making sales from the Draenor Stage 2 and 3 weapons and armor that are now unobtainable, just wondering how much people are actually selling them for. I crafted a few pieces before Shadowlands, and now that TSM can handle different versions, I'm wondering how much I should be pricing them for. I see them going for anywhere between 150k and 750k. And since they're unobtainable, 150k seems a bit low, considering how cool some of the models look, but 750k also seems a bit steep. Just wondering what actually people making sales and how much you're able to get for the items. Thanks for your input. Anything that's unobtainable and you're not buying these items for the gear, right? You're buying the items for the appearance. And so the value is very subjective. We talked about this recently in a video that I did about how to value items in the game. And there's two different types of approaches you can take when looking at valuing items. How useful is that item? In that regard, you're looking at things like its stats. But then you have things like, well, how rare is that item? You can't easily put a price on rarity. If there's only one of them available on the auction house, it is, who's willing to pay the most for it. If you see it at a price that you're willing to pay for it, you might buy it. Somebody else might have seen it and they may think it's too expensive and they choose to not buy it. Although, all that said, that doesn't really answer the question of how do you go about pricing them. So let's see what a few people said then. when I heard the change was coming, I crafted one of each of them. Now that I only have 3 axes left, and the cheapest one was sold for 62k. I wish I crafted more of them, and I even saw people ask for them on trade chat after I've sold out most of my stock. I think the most expensive one was 170k, but most of them sold for less than 100. When I get home, I can check data, blah, blah, blah. So this is actually some good data. This is sort of indicating that between 100k and 170k is where people have actually seen sales. You know, having it listed at 750k is all great, but unless it sells, it doesn't matter. But these are, if this is actually sales data, this is quite interesting to go by. And conveniently, I don't know if this is just coincidence or not, but you know, 100 to 170k is still less than a token value, right? Not that I'm saying somebody would buy a token to buy a piece of transmog gear, but it's more of the fact that this is kind of the range where I think this is the amount of gold that people have, right? People don't necessarily have millions and millions of gold. This is sort of the ballpark to where people have. 750k is probably way more than anybody even has. So they physically can't spend that even if they want to because they don't have it. But these are values where I imagine a good amount of the player base actually has this amount of gold. So, you know, if they go to the auction house and they see something, they at least have the chance to buy it if they want. This is something that you've got to be careful of. You can quite easily outprice yourself on stuff. If you're posting stuff for more than what people actually have physical gold to buy, then it doesn't matter whether they want it. They physically can't buy it even if they want to. On the flip side though, once we jack pitches in and says, I've sold 3 for 700k. They sell if you find a buyer. Armor, apparently the rank 6 is the best in slot twink gear, and I just happen to have 2 of them. Okay, this is interesting though, right? So this means that to that person, the appearance was not what they were after. They were actually after the fact they were valuing it based on its usefulness. It is the best item that they could buy to twink out their character at whatever level they capped it to. So this, you know, their valuation of the item was based very differently to somebody that's buying it for the appearance. If you're buying it purely for the appearance, yeah, sure, 100 to 170k to complete your collection. Maybe it does actually look cool and maybe you are actually going to use it for transmog. But, you know, on its appearance alone, you can get some reasonable amount. But if it becomes useful, if it actually has some purpose more than just its appearance, people might be willing to pay a little bit more for it. Samadan recommends that you look at places like the Undermine Journal when it comes to pricing, because the Undermine Journal will also give you information further than just your home realm. You can see the Hexweave Robe here, for example. There are currently 7 listed in the EU. Now that is across all realms combined. The median price is 42,000, whereas the average is actually 332,000. That seems to give me an indication there's a wild difference between the listing prices of these. You know, it's a goblin's prerogative to try and get as much gold for it as possible. Maybe if you have one of these and you have them and you're trying to sell them, start at a really high price. Start at 750,000 gold. Drop it down by 1,000 gold every day, 2,000 gold every day. Drop it down by 1% every day, whatever metric you want to use. But bring them down in value slowly until you sell it. And then you've done what you can feasibly do to get as much for it as possible. But don't, for the love of all that's holy, don't expect to sell these sorts of things quickly. These are things that you might have to list them on the auction house for 6 months before you actually sell it. But as long as you're, you know, keeping them at a competitive price, keeping of the mindset that you will sell it for as much as you can get for it, but you're not trying to be too greedy. That's the basic advice I can give you. You're better off advertising them in trade chat. Maybe bringing attention to them is probably a good thing. because if you post it in trade chat, in between at least all of the boosting spam, you might find somebody that's like, oh, I need that one for my collection. They may not be looking for it specifically on the auction house, but if you kind of put it in front of them, you might have more success. That's very true. Next on our list, though, we have Quinn's material storage idea. This is a constant bugbear of mine of World of Warcraft, and I think they're utilizing a system that's so old-fashioned nowadays, it has to change. And I would hope that maybe in the next expansion they think about changing something. But Quinn has a great idea about account-wide storage of materials. So server-wide, account-wide banks where all characters on the same realm can access profession materials from anywhere in the game. This could be a quality of life suggestion that could ease up on bag space. It could also ease up on the need for alts, mailing stuff between characters, and then in turn tickets because of missed items. I cannot believe that something like this is just not in the game right now. There's a little mock-up version that he's created just to sort of show what it could be. I would absolutely love something like this. Breaking down materials between... I mean, it doesn't necessarily need to be broken down by expansion. It doesn't even need to be limited. At this point, I feel there's no reason why we couldn't have like an unlimited storage capacity. Back in the early days of World of Warcraft, it was done... our storage was limited for good reason, right? But nowadays, we don't need a limitation on the amount of storage we have. Like, it's just an annoyance more than anything else. The problem is, though, it only affects such a small handful of people. Most people that play this game barely even unlock all of their bank tabs. Never mind think about crafting. Never mind starting new guilds to have spare guild banks. It's a real goblin problem, this. But it's a problem that I would really see. I would really like to see it be fixed. Having more storage space for stuff, I don't see what the problem is nowadays. We have the appearance tabs. The appearances are stored. The reason, for reference, the reason why the transmog system became in place was because it got to the point where people were storing huge amounts of gear so that they could swap out the appearances. And because of that, they made it so that there's an appearance tab, and your appearances, you know, once you've unlocked that appearance, you've got it, and you can then transmog that appearance onto a piece of gear. That same logic could easily apply to materials, for example. That, you know, any materials, we have the reagent bank, which was, you know, a step in the right direction. But let's be honest, how quickly do people fill up their reagent tabs nowadays? Like instantly, within 10 seconds, your reagent tab is full. So yeah, something like this I would absolutely love. Please take all of my money, Blizzard. Heck, be gross about it. Put it on the Blizzard store. Make it an account upgrade for $10 or something. You'd get people buying it for sure. Maybe not many, but I know for a fact I would. So if I would, I'm quite sure there's others that would as well. Samadan chimes in and says this is a fantastic idea, and it'd be really good to help with those people that have many characters and many professions. Perhaps the void storage could be repurposed for something like this. It would certainly save us having to make guilds for all of our characters just for storage. That is true. That is true. Void storage is a weird one. I bet there's many people that don't even know the void storage exists. This was Blizzard's first attempt to fix the transmog thing. They gave people a void storage where you could put your... It was initially designed so that you could put your appearances that you're not using now into storage. And then eventually they just realized, well, how about we just make the appearances account wide and then make a transmog dude. So, also known as legendary junk storage. Yeah, true. Yeah, the void storage has not really been even when they implemented it to the game, when did it come into the game? Like Cataclysm or something? I can't remember now, a long time ago. But it's basically never been used by anybody. So I'm quite sure they could take the code and rejig it in some way, shape or form. It could be good. It could be good. The final topic of conversation is some easy material flipping. Now, I don't really feel the need to go too deep into this. I was quite surprised that Samadan put this video in the post, if I'm going to be honest. Mainly because this was realistically just a bit of an update of my NA Let's Play series. Although I did talk about material flipping for quite a while in this. What we've been doing over on the NA series is building up our initial gold by buying and selling low-level materials. So I talked about that for a little while. Feel free to jump onto that and have a look if you're interested. Although just yesterday I did do a podcast that talks about, you know, the mindset behind flipping in total, a bit of a flipping masterclass. So feel free to check that out as well. If you want to do some further reading though, boys and girls, most of this information started on the WoW Economy subreddit. They also have their accompanying Discord server, which you can jump into. This is also very helpful if you have any TSM related issues. There's the official TSM support Discord is also the same WoW Economy Discord. You can catch Samadan streaming live though on Twitch. He usually streams on Sunday. There are a couple of other days during the week he tends to stream as well. Or you can go say hi to him over on Twitter. But I'll leave it there for this video, boys and girls. I hope you enjoyed that. Make sure you give the video a like if you enjoyed it. It lets YouTube know that you did and helps promote it to others. So I thank you for that. But I will catch you guys next time. Peace.